The Mauryan Empire brought a new way of ruling called a centralized empire. Before that, India had many small kingdoms and republics that sometimes worked together. But under the Mauryas, everything changed. They controlled most of India with one powerful government. Some areas near the edges of the empire had more freedom, but inside, everyone had to follow Mauryan rule. It wasn't like a group of states working together. The Mauryan Empire was all about one strong ruler. Even though some tribal groups still had their own ways of governing, they weren't part of the Mauryan government. This shows how the Mauryan Empire was all about one ruler having control, rather than different groups working together.
The treatise discusses how King Asoka of the Mauryan Empire centralized power, enhancing his control over all aspects of governance and society. The king's authority extended to making laws that could override traditional ones, shifting his role from a distant protector to an active, paternal figure who directly managed his kingdom's welfare. Asoka adopted a fatherly approach, treating his subjects as his children and personally ensuring their well-being through policies and extensive tours of his empire, supported by improved administration and infrastructure. His rule marked a significant increase in royal power, partially moderated by religious and ministerial advice. However, unlike traditional rulers, Asoka minimized the political role of religious figures like the Purohita during his reign.
Asoka's use of the title Devnampiya showed his desire for support from religious leaders, but it also aimed to connect kingship with divine power, maybe even without the need for priests. This helped his propaganda, convincing people he was favored by the gods. He believed in this title's literal meaning in his later years. The Arthashastra emphasized kings being accessible to officials and subjects, which the Mauryas followed. Asoka ensured his availability for consultation, even while being massaged. Kaulya stressed three practices for a successful king: equal attention to all matters, staying active, and never slacking in duties. Legislation then mainly confirmed social customs, with the king having the final say. The Council of Ministers acted as a check on the king, influenced by public opinion and the king's strength and council members' abilities. The council advised the king, but the final decision was his. The king had significant control over his council because he personally chose the members, usually selecting those who agreed with his policies. The Arthashastra suggests that ministers should be chosen based on qualities like birth, integrity, and intelligence, verified from various sources, although this ideal was likely not fully practiced. The king could also test ministerial loyalty with help from the chief minister and the Purohita, priest. Megasthenes noted that advisors usually came from higher castes, typically Brahmins or Kshatris. The number of council members varied as needed, and while the Mauryans likely had a large council, a smaller group of 3 or 4, including the chief minister, often formed a closer advisory body for specific consultations. This setup allowed for more open and confidential discussions, essential for maintaining secrecy in governance. As recommended by Kautilya, the central administration managed revenue through specific offices.
The treasurer handled the storage of state treasures and income, including cash and goods like grains and gems. The chief collector gathered revenue from various sources such as cities and lands, and also managed income and expenditure details. Both worked with the accountant general who, supported by clerks, kept financial records for the kingdom and royal household. Financial accountability was stressed, with joint reporting by ministers and penalties like heavy fines for embezzlement. Salaries for top officials like the minister and army commander were notably high, and funds came from national revenue and crown lands. Specific salary amounts were provided, though their exact value and payment frequency were not detailed.
Expenditure on public works included costs for roads, wells, rest houses, irrigation, and planting medicinal plants. A significant portion of revenue also went to maintaining a large army and funding state mines and manufacturing. It's unclear if religious grants came from the treasury or crown lands. The Arthashastra doesn't distinguish between the national treasury and personal funds, suggesting the king's private donations could have used public funds, possibly causing tension with other religious groups. Kautilya described the roles of various superintendents who managed and reported on revenue from specific sources, helping connect local and capital administration. These officials oversaw areas such as gold, commerce, and various public services, integrating diverse administrative functions. Provincial administration during Asoka's reign was managed by members of the royal family who served as viceroys or governors across 4 major provinces: Taxila, Ujjain, Tosli, and Suvarnagiri. These appointments helped train princes in governance and ensured their loyalty to the king, reducing the risk of rebellions. However, this could also lead to power struggles among ambitious princes. Local governors were typically chosen from the local populace to minimize resistance. In some areas, existing local rulers were kept in charge to avoid disrupting the existing order. The Provincial Council of Ministers held significant power, acting as a check on the viceroys and maintaining direct contact with the king, sometimes even bypassing the viceroys.
The term Mahamathas in Mauryan administration referred to a variety of high-ranking officials, but their exact roles remain unclear. In different texts, Mahamathas could mean ministers, members of an advisory council, or senior officials in charge of various administrative and judicial duties. For example, they handled general administration, judicial responsibilities, and inspected other officials' work. Asoka, during his reign, introduced a new type of Mahamatta known as the Dhamma Mahamatta in his 14th regnal year, focusing on propagating his policies of Dhamma, moral law. Historical sources like Megasthenes and others describe Mahamathas as part of a respected and influential group, involved in high-level decision-making, managing public affairs, and holding key positions in the treasury, army, and other government sectors. Despite being small in number, they were highly respected for their wisdom and justice. The Mahamathas in Mauryan administration were senior officials with diverse roles, from administration to judiciary duties, as described in various sources. It was practical for the king to select these experienced officials for his ministerial council. While European accounts mainly miss the role of Dhamma Mahamathas, Asoka's reforms later recognized them as crucial. In urban settings, Mahamathas ensured justice and fair judgment, with Asoka stressing the importance of integrity in the first separate edict. He also established systems for regular inspections to prevent judicial injustice. In rural areas, Ajcase handled judicial functions and disputes related to agriculture and land. Late in his reign, Asoka increased their authority, enhancing access to justice in these regions. He aimed for uniformity in judicial procedures and punishments, challenging existing practices based on caste differences.
The term Samat from the text, translated as impartiality, suggests that Asoka considered introducing a legal system where punishments were not influenced by the social status of the offender, a significant departure from traditional laws that varied penalties based on caste. Such a move, aligning with the principles of Dhamma, would have been radical and potentially disruptive, possibly upsetting powerful groups like the Brahmins and Kshatriyas. To avoid direct conflict, Asoka took milder steps, such as abolishing animal sacrifices and showing respect for Brahmins in his edicts. A more recent interpretation of Samat as uniformity indicates that Asoka aimed for a standardized legal process across his empire. ensuring consistency in the enforcement of laws by his officials. The Rajukas Megasthenes noted that crime was relatively low in Mauryan India, crediting this to the honesty of the people and the strict policing in the capital, Paliputra. The Arthashastra, a significant text from that period, details a variety of crimes and the methods for their detection and suppression. Punishments mostly involved fines, though harsher penalties like mutilation and even capital punishment were also practiced. Notably, Emperor Asoka, despite his Buddhist beliefs, did not abolish the death penalty but introduced a 3-day respite for appeals or arrangements by the condemned. Provinces were organized into districts, each managed by key officials like the Pradeka, who supervised local governance and legal matters, reflecting a structured and hierarchical approach to administration and law enforcement in Mauryan India.
Detailed administration. The Mauryan administration was meticulously organized, with officers overseeing vital sectors like irrigation and forest management. Initiatives such as dam construction and forest supervision underscored the recognition of their economic importance and contribution to revenue generation. Regulations governing forest clearance aimed to balance agricultural expansion with tax collection. Military organization, military administration, as outlined by Kautilya and observed by Megasthenes, emphasized troop categorization and soldier welfare. Specialized officers managed different military units, including infantry and cavalry. Megasthenes also noted the existence of city-states within the empire, suggesting a degree of local autonomy, although this might have been exaggerated in later historical accounts. Centralization and challenges. Mauryan governance was centralized, with policies emanating from the capital, yet maintaining effective control posed challenges, leading to weaknesses in later Mauryan rule. The empire's extent under Ashoka is indicated by the distribution of his edicts, which reached Afghanistan but not southern regions. Ashoka's missions aimed to propagate Dhamma principles, but their limited success is evident from their absence in later edicts. Interactions and cultural exchanges. Interactions between India and neighboring regions, particularly Iran, facilitated cultural exchanges, although these should be understood within broader historical dynamics rather than simplistic notions of direct influence.
Cultural affinities and contacts. The Mauryan period saw significant cultural exchanges between India and regions like Iran, evidenced by shared customs, linguistic similarities, and architectural resemblances. Both Darius of Persia and Ashoka employed similar forms of royal inscriptions, suggesting possible cross-cultural influence. Greek presence in northwest India, predating Alexander's conquest, and subsequent interactions further enriched cultural exchanges, trade and diplomacy. Trade flourished between India and Babylon, aiding communication with the West via maritime routes. Greek settlements along the northwest frontier maintained diplomatic relations with the Mauryan Empire, with ambassadors from various Hellenic kingdoms visiting Patliputra. The term Yona or Yavna referred to Greeks and indicates familiarity and engagement with Greek culture. Geopolitical influence. The Mauryan sphere of influence extended to regions like Kashmir, where literary sources mention Ashoka's activities, though archaeological evidence is scarce. The northwest frontier, with its Greek settlements, was likely under direct Mauryan control, with cultural and administrative exchanges occurring. Overall, the Mauryan period was characterized by extensive cultural interactions, trade networks, and diplomatic engagements, contributing to the richness and diversity of the Indian subcontinent's historical tapestry.
Connections with Khot and Nepal. While Tibetan tradition suggests that Ashoka visited Khot and founded the kingdom, this seems unlikely due to his age and the hazardous journey involved. However, Ashoka likely had close ties with modern Nepal, as evidenced by his supposed visit to Rummindei and his daughter's marriage to a Nepalese prince. The extent of Mauryan control in Nepal remains uncertain, but there are indications of influence, including attributed temples, expansion into eastern India. Mauryan influence extended into regions like Vanga, modern-day Bengal, and Kalinga, with significant settlements and trade routes. Excavations reveal Mauryan presence in the Ganges Delta. Strengthening control in eastern India, South Indian relations, Mauryan engagement with southern India is documented through literary and epigraphical sources. Tamil literature references Nandas and Mauryas, while Ashokan edicts in South Indian sites mark the empire's southern borders. The degree of civilization in South Indian kingdoms suggests advanced trade relations with the Roman Empire. Ceylonese connections, Ceylon, referred to as Tambapani in Ashoka's edicts, maintained contacts with India prior to Ashoka's reign, with evidence of Buddhist missions and influence. Mahinda's arrival in Ceylon solidified Buddhism's status, with King Dev Nampiya Tissa embracing the faith and fostering close ties with Ashoka. Trading and diplomatic exchanges between India and Ceylon strengthened political and cultural connections.
In short, the Mauryan Empire exhibited a sophisticated internal administration, overseeing crucial sectors like irrigation and military organization. Despite centralization, some local autonomy existed. In foreign relations, Ashoka's missions aimed to spread Dhamma, fostering cultural exchanges. However, maintaining control over the vast empire posed challenges, leading to weaknesses in later rule.